Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Nev, and in today's video I'm going to talk to you about some of the most common questions that I get about PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. I am a certified health and nutrition practitioner. I have helped so many women with PCOS, fibroids, or all other sorts of reproductive health issues. I have been also there myself. I have dealt with, my share of period and gynecological problems over the years, between having painful periods, being diagnosed with endometriosis, having an ovarian cyst, and even a fibroid. And I can thankfully say that there is actually a way out. So for today's video, I have a list of questions that I'm going to kind of go through because these are the things that I get asked all the time. The most common questions that I get about PCOS is either where do I start, or I'm so overwhelmed, what is the one thing that I should do? So it's either one of those, and both of these questions are difficult to answer because there is not really one thing to do, right? So where to start, it can get a little bit tricky. And the reason it's a little bit tricky because it really depends where you're at. So if you're just starting your healing journey and say you're not really following the basics of a PCOS or a fibroid protocol that can be found in the medical medium books, you're probably not going to be able to dive deeper into the root cause issues. So this is the first thing that we need to look into so we can figure out where to go from here. Because I know how tough it can be when you don't really know where you're starting from. And for those of you who have been to maybe like holistic practitioners, you probably have heard that there is, I think, kind of like a 3 or 4 kind of main things that come across when there is a PCOS at play, like insulin resistance, there's inflammation, there is adrenals and endocrine disruptors or hormonal imbalance and stuff like that. However, without really knowing the real reason why you have these symptoms in the first place, you will be just playing guessing games and going in circles, and you're going to get frustrated. And probably those of you who have followed this route didn't really get the results that you wanted, and that's probably why you're here. So we're going to get to the bottom of this if you stay to the end. I mean, I agree, making sure that you're not, having huge spikes and crashes in your blood sugar is great for insulin resistance. It is also good for your adrenals and for your stress hormone response, and eating a clean diet without processed foods is also good. So I'm not interfering with any of that, and that may help you, but you really need to get into the nitty-gritty of what is going on to see the real results. One of the things that I want to get across to women is to validate the complexity of the conditions, because these is just chronic health conditions. And I understand that when you're starting to implement the medical medium information into your life, it is very tempting to dive too deep too soon without actually, mastering the steps, because there is really not just one thing to do. And, if you're not really looking after your adrenals, if you're not really grazing every 1 to 2 hours, if you aren't getting enough good sleep, or you don't really have good morning routine, all of that kind of stuff, like you won't be able to really get much further no matter how much you're actually trying or how many supplements you're taking. So this is what I help my clients with. I basically help you, walk you through the basics and get you on a steady fit before we dive deep on each of the root causes that are happening in your case. And I help you not to really get lost in the weeds too much, if that makes sense, because there could be a lot of information. Another question that I receive quite often is, how do I know if I'm on the right track? And many of you are finding your symptoms pretty complex, so you're not really sure if you're on the right track, if you're doing the right things. And I think that there's a lot of noise out here, but it's really hard to know what works and what doesn't work. So it can be really frustrating, especially if you're looking for data on, like, for example, the diet, questioning if this diet is actually working for me. I think that there is general belief that we need some kind of proof, scientific evidence or test so we know that we are going in the right direction. I have nothing against medical testing, just so you know. And the first step that I always recommend is discussing your symptoms with your health practitioners and getting proper diagnosis. I am just saying this from a point of view that we have been conditioned to just simply give our power away, because we do have our intuition and we do know what feels good, what works and what doesn't work. And in some cases, like I've seen this so many times with my clients, and I have seen this with myself, that everything can just look so good on paper, but if you still have the symptoms and you're not feeling well, then how does that make sense? So the very first thing that I would focus on is the diet. The diet is the most important, because the cysts in the ovaries are caused by one or more varieties of the Epstein-Barr virus combined with a variety of toxins and poisons. And the body forms cysts in a way to protect itself, making sure that the viral activity happens within the cyst and not outside of it in other places in the body. So when it's trapped, the virus works to survive. So it basically develops blood vessels outside of the cyst in order to draw nutrients and fuel back inside to feed these injured, unhealthy cells and viruses and keep them alive. So it's basically your diet that makes the difference in whether the cyst or fibroid will continue to grow or it will start to reduce. First of all, the focus should always be on removing the pathogen-feeding foods. I would put emphasis on the eggs and dairy as being on the top of the list. And again, focus on bringing in more fruits, vegetables, leafy greens, lower the fats, increase your hydration, and of course, celery juice. I think that's a major one. Again, there are more specific things that one can get into. And if you are looking into something more specific, you can research my Instagram page. I share a lot of tips there on each of these things. But basically, the best way to know whether you're having results is by how you feel. Simple as that. Do you sleep better? Do you have more energy? How are your periods? Are they more regular? How are your PMS symptoms? Unfortunately, there is nothing like a miracle cure. You know, it's going to require lifestyle changes and it's going to require some time. And if you are persistent, you are going to see results. But if you have been working on this for maybe months or maybe even years and you don't see improvements, that is basically a big red flag for me. So you must be doing something wrong, or perhaps you're missing some key puzzle pieces. Okay, the next question that I have is about supplements. Do you have any supplements that you like to use for reproductive health, like PCOS or fibroids? These are questions that I get like daily. So speaking of supplements, sure I do, but not every supplement is right for everybody, if that makes sense. It is important to look in the context to see what are the other symptoms you may have, the other things you are experiencing. We need to see what are the other things that are at play in your individual case, like maybe your liver, your thyroid, your adrenals, toxicity levels, etc. These conditions can sound really complex, but I would like to start with the basic supplements like B12, zinc, vitamin C, lemon balm, cat's claw, lysine, those ones. Then I would consider bringing in maybe nettle, pomegranate juice, raspberry leaf tea. Propolis is also a very good one. But my best advice for you is if you are feeling overwhelmed is to make a plan and start implementing one thing at a time. For example, when you feel like you're on the right track with your morning routine, then you can add in another thing. Just do a little bit at a time. And I think that you'll get a little bit more long-term benefit like that, rather than from taking it all at once and you're not sticking to anything and you're being confused and it's overwhelming. If you learned something today or you enjoyed today's video, or maybe you even have a question for me that you'd like me to answer, let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time and I'll see you next time.